Andrea Ross here from the Career Establishment, and welcome to Talent Tip Tuesday. We have put this into two parts. So the first part, I'm going to be focusing on customer buyer styles for a specific personality or behavioural model. The following couple of weeks' time, I'm going to be focusing on another model that you can use as recruiters to understand your clients better, so that when it comes to negotiations or building relationships, maybe you're selling a candidate over the phone, or whatever part in the recruitment process you're in, you can actually identify what that personality is of your client and be able to adapt your style accordingly. So let's kick off. Now, you're probably wondering, what is the DISC model? That's what we're talking about today, is the DISC model. Now, it was actually first proposed by a guy called William Moulton Marston. He wrote a book and he put together the DISC model. Now, William Marston also, interestingly, came up with Wonder Woman. So it's quite interesting, isn't it? Anyway, so what the DISC model is all about is they put together a psychometric assessment, behavioural tool, talent assessment, whatever, however you really kind of want to call it. And basically the tool that I use is called Everything DISC. If you look on the internet, there are so many companies that actually produce or put together assessment tools on DISC. So there are so many out there. I personally like the one that's called Everything DISC. It's actually part of the Wiley group, and they just have this really, really beautiful, aesthetically pleasing report. Goes into a lot of detail, and it also gives you even more detail on how you can interact with people from different styles. So basically what the Everything DISC tool does is you take an assessment online and you basically get the results on where you sit within the 4 quadrants, whether you're D, dominance, I, influence, S, steadiness, and C, conscientiousness. I'm going to go over that in a second in a little bit more detail, but it will show you where on that quadrant, on that DISC, where you sit, and that will tell you what your personality or what kind of your behavioural tendencies are, what you're motivated by, what your fears are, what your limitations are, what your priorities are in life. So it's a really great tool. So if you're interested in doing it yourself and want to increase your self-awareness about your own sort of behavioural tendencies, reach out. It's not an expensive tool, and let me just go into a little bit more detail on what really DISC is. So it provides a common language that you can discuss with your teammates, with your family, with your friends. You learn a little bit more about yourself, you learn about others, because you'll start to kind of get an idea when you meet someone new. I wonder whether you're a dominance, I wonder whether you're an influence personality, I wonder whether you're steadiness, I wonder whether you're conscientiousness. So it's a really, as soon as you take the assessment and you get to know those different sort of behavioural styles, you'll really start to look at the world in a really different way. But the whole sort of philosophy around DISC is to, 1, increase your own self-awareness, but 2, to understand the motivations, the needs of someone else. And that's really useful in sales, obviously, because when you're going out and building a relationship and creating common ground, but also understanding where they're coming from, on what they're motivated for, or what they like to see from you in terms of that service, it's so much easier to adapt that style and gain much more deep relationships with clients when you know what style they are. So this is the DISC model that I like to use. You'll probably see a lot on the internet that don't have these kind of behavioural tendencies around them. So really, really simply, if you were to not take the assessment and you were to look at behavioural tendencies of active, fast-paced, assertive, louder, this is how someone shows up at work. These are workplace behaviours. Or perhaps you're on the other horizontal line or axes, and you're calm, that's quite methodical, you're quite careful, you're soft to speech. Obviously, you can probably tell, for me, I'm active, I'm fast-paced, I'm going to be right up the top. Yeah. Now, if I was to look on the other axes in terms of the environment that I like to be in, or where I tend to be, am I questioning, am I quite logical, am I objective, am I challenging, or am I more accepting, or people focused, more empathetic and receptive, agreeable? So again, I would look at where I am on here. So let me just do the thing. I'm here. I would say I'm probably over here. So I'm probably a DI. Now I know I am actually a DI, a dominance influence. And so some styles can actually straddle 1 or 2. You don't tend to have it here because they're quite different, but you tend to have it over here, over here, over here, over here. What you'll also find when you find out your result is, if you were a DI, for instance, or let's just say you were a D, you're a dominance, and you had behavioural tendencies that were these here. You might find your opposite is something, you know, for you to be putting a plan together on how you can build strong relationships with people that are steadiness, because they're a complete opposite to you. You know, you might find there's someone in the office, you go, oh my gosh, they're always talking about people and care about everyone in the team. They're too concerned about what's going on in the office and how everyone feels and just getting the job done. That's probably what a dominance would say. And so there's sometimes going to be a clash between the two because you're complete opposites. So as soon as you kind of get to know your own style, you'll start to respect and appreciate other people's styles. It makes it a lot easier to build close relationships with people. Okay, so how do you adapt your style? Well, first of all, find out what your actual behavioural style is, do an assessment, come to me, go somewhere else, it doesn't matter, just find out your style. And let's say you've got a client that you're dealing with and you dealt them a couple of times, you bet them you picked up a job. And you find that you're trying to work out, you're trying to sort of see the signs on what kind of style they are. So you might be, you've really got to guess, you know, you're not going to have a client that's going to say, you know, hey recruiter, my DISC style is dominance, my recruiter style, my buyer style is steadiness. They're going to tell you that. You've got to guess. You've got to kind of be a bit of a detective here and find out, where do I think they might lie. If I've got a really fast talking client, you know, give me the results, you know, a bit more sort of power and authority, they're motivated by winning, and there might be you know, real get-getter, and they're, you know, asking 1,000 questions, for instance, you'll probably find they're up here, yeah, and then I'd have to adapt my style accordingly. But if I've got someone that maybe is questioning, but they're a little bit more slower taught, they're a little bit methodical in their approach, they may be asking me a little bit more questions than, perhaps they're asking me questions, but they're quite detailed. They're more on the process. How are you going to go about, what are your sourcing channels? How long is that going to take? What is the, you know, they're really going into sort of quite a lot of detail on that. They may well be a conscientious style buyer. And so what does that mean for you? It doesn't matter what your style is. It doesn't matter whether you're a D, an I, an S, a C. You've just got to be able to get into the world of the C, of the conscientious buyer. So this person's going to want a lot of supporting information. You need to go into detail about your recruitment process. You may need to go into more detail on the CVs that you're sending over. You might need to attach any other kind of diagnostic tools that candidate's that's had. You know, you're going into detail. They're not going to want to take risks. So if you're saying, hey, have a look at my wild card candidate, you know, just come on the market and no one's interviewed them, they're probably going to think, whereas if you went in and more, look, this person, we've got some testimonials on them, they are interviewing other places at the moment, they're at second rounds with one of your main competitors, they're probably going to feel a little bit more comforted at making that risk and seeing that wild card candidate. That, you know, with someone with a buyer that's conscientious, they can be quite overly critical. They can tend to overanalyze, and so what you will find is you might if you're not a conscientious behavioural style, as a recruiter, you might get frustrated. You might feel, gosh, they're going into so many details. Why do I have to produce this? Get into their shoes. Yeah, understand why. That is what they are made of. That for them to make decisions and to move forward, they need further information. Yeah, they may need more clarity, and they also may need more time. So if you're selling a candidate over the phone speculatively, don't necessarily expect a conscientious buyer to make that decision there and then. You know, you need to be able to read that conversation, and that they may say, well, I'd like to think on that. And, you know, let them have time to think on that. Follow up the next day. Ask them, is there anything specifically that you might have missed on that CV or the write-up that they would be keen to see? Again, get into the world of that particular individual, you know, because they really do like to, you know, maintain stability, ensure accuracy. So, you know, make sure you've got no spelling mistakes on your CV. So that is just a little bit of a snapshot of how I would adapt my style to a buyer that I saw the signs and identified them as conscientious. I do have a whole training course that's on how to identify styles of the other ones, and way more handouts, more details, but that you have to sign up to my training courses. So next couple of weeks, I'll be doing part 2, and that is going to be getting into detail on another tool, which is Clifton Strengths Talent Assessment. This isn't called disc that we've done today isn't called a talent assessment, it's called a behavioural questionnaire, a behavioural assessment. Clifton Strengths, what I'll be covering, is something I'm really passionate about. I'm also qualified as a certified Clifton Strengths coach, and so for me that goes into even more detail about you as a person, and it really focuses on your 4 strengths domains, which is how you get stuff done, how you influence, how you relationship build, how you strategically think. So that's kind of an exciting one, so watch out for that. And we'll also look at how you can adapt your style as a recruiter using Clifton Strengths. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed today. Do check out our Andrea Picks every week, where I talk about a podcast that I'm in love with, that I find really fascinating, that's related to what you do in the sales field. Secondly, do check out our new podcast page on our website, careerestablishment.com. It's pretty sexy, and please rate and review us on iTunes. I know everyone's got Spotify and you can't rate it, but iTunes does have a function where you can review and rate it, so please do so. Thanks for your time. Please be safe out there and stay tuned. Take care.